Now, interesting, minimum housing code.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
I've never been talked about around this.
Yeah, it's been whispered, but not seriously discussed. I have passed out to each of you a letter, as well as it has an attachment that's a portion of the town of Waynesville's ordinance that is a minimum housing code. I wanted to express to you the purposes of a minimum housing code. This is to adopt a set of minimum standards that we would require of dwellings within the city limits. I think that they can be represented as being a lot more than they are. They are not for aesthetic purposes. This is not. I don't like how that building looks, so that you need to fix that or do this other thing. I'm talking about minimum standards. You have to have a roof, and it has to be fairly sure not to collapse on anybody. You have to have ventilation. You have to, for instance, every room that somebody's going to occupy as a living space has to have a window that you can see out, because otherwise you don't have very good ventilation for your house. Thought very minimal standards. As with that set-off collection program, there's a thorough consideration of people's rights with this. Nothing happens automatically. Everything requires hearing, and there are appeals aplenty. You know, you can appeal once at the town level, and then you're into Superior Court if you don't like the decision that's being made. So I think we need it. I think it would address a lot of the concerns that people have about some dwellings in this town.
Well, now I have a problem with some of this because some people can afford what they can afford. And this is telling you how big the room square footage is, and the room should be, and all that. I think we're overstepping our bounds. Now, what I think we ought to worry more about is these houses out here standing that's half burnt down, that's been there for years, and
right.
We've not done anything about it.
This would address that situation.
But a lot of this is crap. I mean, you try to tell people how they, you know, some people may not can afford but a one-room house.
Well, and I think that's all a matter of how it's enforced, and I don't think there's
well, you go pick and choose it.
No, sir. I'm saying that the way it does not have to be enforced in a draconian method like
that's pick and choose.
No, sir.
Plus you're copying somebody else's orders, Wyoming, according to front of this.
Yes, sir. But I mean, that's just an example.
Well, if somebody can just afford a one-room house and it's safe, then I can't see going in and, I mean, where are you gonna put it? On the town brick?
That's not no, and it's not intended to kick people out of their houses. It's not what we're talking about here.
Well, that ain't what I'm saying.
Well, and again, that is a standard that a different town adopted. You're not obligated to adopt any of those standards.
We do our own to it.
Yes.
So what's the intent to get to or not get to tonight?
It's just discussion. I know we're not anywhere near.
Well, of course not.
I guess I have heard some interest from board members, and I personally think it's a good idea to adopt this kind of thing.
So it certainly could be tweaked.
Absolutely.
Bob, got your hand up, I'll let you talk.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just trying to let everybody else raise their hand too, so we can keep some order here. That's what I was pointing out.
I'm a nice fellow. The only thing, Chairman, I think this is needed. I think it's definitely needed. The only thing I would have a question about, we have some full-time firefighters now. And in the past, I think the fire chief has acted as a building inspector. Is that not right, Mike? Hasn't the fire chief in the past been a building inspector?
I was trying to remember if there was a time, before my time here, that when Joey Stark was the administrator, that perhaps Pete acted as a...
Somewhere.
I'm not sure. of that.
Yeah, well,
Billy?
what I'm getting at is,
You're the oldest
I would like
rat
to
in this
see us
barn.
consider, since we have 3 full-time firefighters, being basically the inspectors to see if there's violations here. I have not talked to the fire chief about this, but quite often, Mike, isn't that a place where quite often you find inspections is in the fire service?
Of course, we're gonna have to get to the underlying issue of whether we're going to consider adoption before we figure who's gonna be the.
Well, I know, but this is in the cover letter.
But, and I would encourage you, any questions you have of Mr. Gruber, he's enforced a code, just administered a code just like this, so he'd be the only one in this room that has experience with it, so.
I don't
Sissy.
think we're talking,
Sissy. Good.
I don't think we're, I mean, as far as, I agree with Terry, as far as some people, you know, what they can afford, and that I can see, but they can still keep the trash around them.
Does that, is that,
That's not part of this.
it's not really directly.
Junk cars or junk.
I don't see,
That's not this.
I have seen them that have sections on, we have a very minimal section in our current codes about vegetation growing up, and there are similar things to that can be a part of a minimum standing, housing standard, yes. I don't know that it's in Waynesville's particularly.
And it's not in this.
It's not in front of you. Of course, this is, understand, this is just for, I gave you, these are the minimum standards for dwellings and dwelling units only. There's about 6 or 8 more sections to Waynesville's code, and
choice.
In other words, sir, we just really wanted tonight to talk about, yes, we would be interested in having a code, you know, a housing code, but then it would need to be tweaked to what we want it to be, not what we're looking at necessarily here.
Or in the converse, no, we wouldn't like that one, just
Yeah.
for discussion
Oh,
points.
excuse me, yes,
Right.
or not.
Right,
certainly.
okay. All right, and I'm assuming by the nature of that question and that comment, then you're in favor of exploring the idea.
Yes, sir. I have several homes in my area that I would like to have inspected.
So this isn't personal vengeance.
No. Health issues, oh,
Not in
sir.
my backyard.
No. You don't live close enough.
And Jerry, you're on record as being very skeptical.
Very skeptical.
Billy, what do you think? You got a comment yet, or you want to listen?
I certainly don't mind talking about it.
Vote?
I want to talk about it.
Seems like we want to talk about it.
Sure.
Yeah, I do
I
too.
think we need to.
So what do we do, John?
I would bring back to you a proposed ordinance to start to work through, and I don't know that it might merit its own discussion to the degree of certainly not over a long period of time, but like we did with the UDO, I think it would be worth maybe a work session to really look at just it, and talk about nothing but it.
Well, I just, in thinking about some of this and reading this over, I think one of the major problems is not with the people that own the homes, but the people, the landlords. This has been, I think, the biggest problem. We've got people paying exorbitant rents living in substandard housing.
I think that, yes, I agree with
Derek
you.
can attest to that. We have a bad situation.
Your house isn't that bad.
Sir?
Your house is not that bad.
I'm sorry. You know, you people are talking about how good structure was, but there's something else you need to think about, is how many cars in that driveway to an apartment. There's several apartments on Old Cove that'll have 6 to 7 cars for a 2-bedroom apartment. And then a few apartments on up, you'll have 4 to 5 cars to an apartment. You have too many people living in something like 1,000 square feet or 1,200 square feet.
That's getting closer. I'm thinking more like Jerry on that problem. Sometimes you gotta bundle up to be able to afford it, but if the house can handle it, and it's, well, substandards, maybe that's all you can do.
Well, it all goes together, too much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think a generation ago, this is probably, would be called like a anti-slum act or something along those lines. This, I think, was the original idea. And I don't know if Mike wanted to say anything about his experience with enforcement of these.
I mean, I could explain some differences. Illinois is much more highly regulated state than North Carolina. I mean, practically nothing in Illinois is on zone. I mean, practically nothing. There might be some areas that don't have some kind of regulation. And in the community I worked in specifically, it was given to the fire department. It became such a complex issue that we then hired people in to do nothing but that. We had 5 people on staff that did nothing but code enforcement. We did grass cutting issues. We had people that would go out on Thursday just to let people know that their grasses needed to be cut. It depends on how complex you want it to be. It doesn't have to be all that complex, but ours was instituted, in the town I was in, was instituted because we did have the situation that Alderman Scott talked about with substandard housing being rented at extreme prices. People didn't have heat, they didn't have hot water, and there was no maintenance stuff on those rental issues, and it became a significant issue that if you it got to the point that you had to be licensed to rent, and your house was inspected annually, and there was a substantial fee for that. That if you didn't have the inspection, then you couldn't rent that house.
But you're not saying we need to get that.
We don't need to go that far. That's why we needed that kind of staff to do it. Is because there were annual inspections of every rental property in town.
But,
So it's not something that we have to do here, and there's various aspects of it.
That's why everybody from Illinois moved down here.
I would hope that we could direct John to take our concerns and our thoughts and maybe come forward with a new tweaking, so to speak. I personally would like to make sure that it had some language about the issues that Ms. Olson and others have brought up from time to time, just about the, not necessarily the house proper, but the property proper, because that's certainly, in a lot of ways, and Jerry, that's, when you're talking outside the house in the yard, that's not so much an economic issue as it's just a laziness, not wanting to haul stuff off issue.
I've got state license in public health.
Okay. So, is there a motion that we direct our attorney to move forward in this matter?
I second, sir.
Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? So noted. Okay.
I'll try to get a some proposed language back to you at the next meeting, and then we can maybe look for sometime in the next month after that where everybody can read and have a chance to look at it, maybe have a work session.
So Mike Decker, if we were to take about 5 or 10 minute break, could you go and get set up so you'd be ready? Let's take about 5 or 10 minutes. Mike needs a little minute to get set up for his proposal coming up. Sissy, we're looking at 5 or 10 minutes. Don't go far, okay? Kickoff's not till